Okay, tell me, I know you were in the temple on 9/11. I was actually, you two were temple workers, and I was going to go so I could be in your session. And I was getting dressed, and I always had my radio on in the mornings. So I was getting dressed, and I could hear that, I could just tell something was happening. And so I walked over to the radio and listened and turned it up, and the guy was talking about the Twin Towers, and I turned the TV on and was glued to it for I don't know how many days afterwards. So I never made it to the temple. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, we were there, and I had heard I had to go into the dressing room because I was going to be on the front desk, and I had to go get my coat on. And as I was coming through the dressing room, I heard a couple of brothers talking to each other, something about the World Trade Center. And I got down to the front desk, and I was on there with old brother Stanton. I think his name was Stanton. And what was going to be the highlight of being on the desk that day was Gifford Nielsen and his wife came in, and they were all happy and holding hands, and they came in, and I checked their recommends, and they went on through. And then this brother Hart, who was the temple engineer, came through, and he went out front, and he came back in, and somebody said that he had put the flag at half-mast, and I said, Brother Stanton, I said, well, what did they put the flag at half-mast for? And he says, because of the World Trade Center. And I said, what happened to the World Trade Center? He says, it's gone. And I said, goodness. And so anyway, we finished, that's about all I heard about it then. And we finished out our shift, and we headed for home, and then we heard all the details on the radio on the way home, and saw all the stuff on TV after we got there. But that was the main thing about it that I remember is we were there, and even in the temple, word got in.
Yeah, I was just coming out of the washing and anointing. I was doing that when I came out, and I came out by that desk there, and one of the sisters said, did you hear about what happened in New York? And I said, what happened? And she said the World Trade Center. Well, then they all start winning, but we had to finish our time there. So I went on to I had to work next to the desk for names, and I went and did that, and I'd go take one of the sisters in to give her a name and a new name, and she would start talking about it and I knew it was a big deal. I knew something really big had happened. And I kept saying, did my daughter come? I kept looking for you, and I said my daughter was supposed to come, and I would ask if my daughter came in, and they said no, so anyway, when we finished our session and was ready to come home, we just got in the car. There must have been 20 calls on the cell phone. And I looked at that cell phone, and I said, boy, something has happened. So I started checking all the calls, and I must have got 10 calls from every one of my kids, our kids. And so then we went on home, right home, so we could, see what was going on. And then, of course, that went on for days. So.
I remember the space shuttle was Challenger, the first one in '87. Mom, Jenny, and I used to go to each other's houses and visit. Well, Jenny was up at my house, and we were sitting in the living room talking, and it was, the same thing. We had the radio on low, and I think we kept picking up Space Shuttle. And I was like, we just kind of looked at each other and went, what's going on? So I went over and turned the radio up, and we found out it had exploded. And that was, it still shakes me. I'm just,
That was awful.
so Dad, you were actually working on that program, so tell me about what was going on.
Just sitting at my desk working, and I had in my little office room there was a speaker box that had the up and down link voices from the shuttle, and this one the vehicle had just taken off, and whoever was talking was commenting about the different stages it was going through, and all of a sudden everything got kind of quiet. And he came back on, and he says, Mission Control has just informed me that the vehicle, that the
Shuttle?
space shuttle has exploded, or the vehicle has exploded. And so for some reason, I was the only one that had a speaker in my closet, in my office, so closet. So my manager was across the hall, so I went over, and he was in a conference with somebody, and I banged on the door, and I said, hey, that's what happened. So we all went down to the cafeteria where they had TVs set up so the employees could come in and watch the launch. They always did that, and everybody in the building was in the cafeteria watching what was going on. And earlier, when I'd walked through the cafeteria, they hadn't launched yet, and the cameras were all on the rocket engines on the shuttle, and on the plumbing and everything, showing all the icicles hanging on it before it took off. And but anyway,
Weren't you thinking then that
it
wasn't right?
thinking that's kind of, it is kind of, but anyway, that's about it. And then Reagan came a couple days later and spoke to all the troops there.
Did the astronauts know that they were in trouble, or?
I'm sure they did. Initially, they thought that everything exploded and nobody knew anything about it. But after they got hauling stuff out of the ocean, they found that the cabin was intact, and they probably just were alive and unable to do anything except write it down. And they probably passed out from, I don't know, from pressure changes and stuff like that. I don't know about that.
How far up were they?
I don't know. They were, I don't know. I don't remember. I did know. They were still within camera range. But they've got great big telephoto lenses on those cameras. And Bishop Lind had flown Challenger the flight before that.
Oh, wow.
And he said that, he told us later that when they tear all those rockets that blew, they tear all that stuff apart after the mission. And he said that those O-rings on his flight when they tore it apart, the O-rings were just within, you know, just a small fraction of an inch of blowing through. So it was a chronic problem, but it could or couldn't affect the flight.
So
I'm not gonna be able to talk.